Hey, Tom. Nice to see you all. Right? Where's Ronnie? Ron, come on down.
Okay. Stand on the inside of you. You get close to the middle.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all, in case you haven't been to Middlesex County, to the greatest county in the state and in the country. And as my predecessor, David B. Crabier, would say, the greatest county in the land.
Yes.
And we have a great educational system right here in our vocational school system. We have 3 Blue Ribbon Awards here, which is commendable. And that's due to the great people that we have, the administration, and all the educators and all the staff. So, with that being said, I'd like to introduce, first of all, I'd like to recognize that some of our elected officials that are here. We have Senator Pat Deignan. We have Assemblywoman Nancy Pinkin. Forgive me if I miss anyone. I see Councilman from Woodbridge, Kyle Anderson, and our county superintendent. And I see Councilwoman Sullivan from East Brunswick. And without further ado, I would like to welcome to the podium our county superintendent for the vocational schools, Diane Velo.
Thank you, man.
Welcome to Middlesex County Vocational and Technical Schools. Career technical education provides students with the academic and technical skills they need to succeed in college and in their careers. It focuses students on cutting-edge technology in their career majors, workplace communication skills, and real-world learning opportunities. Our CTE courses also prepare our students to address real-world needs, like sustainability, which is why we've been recognized here in this building as a National Green Ribbon School. About 75% of our graduates go on to college and post-secondary training with a purpose in mind. Our graduates enter the workforce with skills and industry-recognized credentials, well-prepared and in demand. Our graduates are as diverse as New Jersey. Today, they're Rhodes Scholars, researchers, doctors, engineers, performing in dance companies and HBO productions, operating and staffing small businesses across the county, chefs, nurses, Jaguar technicians, and 100 other jobs. Today, our students are employed by New Jersey businesses, including Boost Mobile, the YMCA, Firestone Complete Auto Care, Gilchrist and Soames, Home Depot, Raritan Bay Medical Center, and many more. Here, we constantly look at workforce and industry needs to help our community be prepared for the future. We work with partners like the county freeholders, Workforce Development, the Department of Education, the Department of Labor, the Apprenticeship Network, the Port Authority, the Carpenters Union, Stagehands Union, local business and industry in order to be ready. As we work to expand our capacity to meet the workforce and industry needs of tomorrow, we're excited about Governor Murphy's Job New Jersey plan, which will provide a roadmap for success to our students. And so, our school community is honored to host the leader of our state today. We welcome his cabinet and his staff and all of our visitors. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce the Governor of New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy.
Thank you, great job. Well done. Well done. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, first and foremost, for that very gracious introduction, Diane Velo, Superintendent, for not just welcoming us to the East Brunswick campus of Middlesex County Vocational and Technical Schools, but for what you and your team do every single day. Freeholder Director, dear friend Ron Rios, thank you, buddy. To the elected officials here, beginning with the murderer's row here in the front of Pat and Nancy and many others, thank you for coming out today. A lot of other assorted VIPs, thank you for being here, including our brothers and sisters in organized labor. I want to thank the tremendous educators who welcomed us into their classroom today, particularly in beginning with Mr. Merck, so-called Mr. Merck. Mr. Mercadante is the full name, but known by all apparently as Mr. Merck. We just spent 25 minutes, fascinating 25 minutes, and hats off to the students, not just the educators, but the students who allowed us to get a glimpse of how they're preparing for their futures right here today. I also want to acknowledge a handful of members of our cabinet who are with us today. You'll hear from many of them. To my far left, the Secretary of Higher Education, Dr. Zakiya Smith-Ellis. To my immediate left, the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, Rob Acero. Angelo, Rob, you're here. Two to my right, the Commissioner of the Department of Education, Dr. Lamont Repillette. To his right, the CEO of the Economic Development Authority, Tim Sullivan. And in row 1A, our Chief Innovation Officer, Beth Novak. Beth, thank you. So I mentioned that the students we were with were working on their futures today, and that's why we're here, to talk about their future and ours. As I said yesterday in my State of the State address, our goal is to see New Jersey dominate this new decade. But to do that, we will need to continue to strengthen our economy and close the gap that we currently see. Help potential employers, on the one hand, find the workers they need, and help potential employees, on the other hand, find where they can best put their skills to work. Enter Jobs NJ. Ta-da, we just did this in the... Can you still see that? How cool is that, huh? I witnessed it with my own eyes. Ron was right beside me. He witnessed me witnessing it with my own eyes. I did it, exactly. So Jobs NJ is our new program to close this gap and ensure that the training being done here and in schools and colleges across our state is fully aligned with the needs of employers and the future direction of our economy. We developed this plan with the input of many stakeholders, from businesses and educators to labor and community leaders, and using insights from national workforce development experts. I should have actually broadened that to say international workforce development experts, because Rob and I and many of us remain big students and fans of models in Germany and Switzerland and elsewhere. Moreover, Jobs NJ is the answer to the question I often get asked first by businesses looking to locate to start in or grow here in New Jersey. Do you have the workforce that we need? Joe Kelly reminded me this morning that we heard that question morning, noon, and night on our packed trip to India a few months ago, where we already have a very significant presence of Indian businesses. But when you say, well, what do you need to grow? It's all talent. It's all workforce. Do you have the workforce of tomorrow that we're gonna need? It's not all in the STEM arena, but it's overwhelmingly in the STEM arena. I also want to thank my very dear friend Carl Van Horn, who runs the Heldrich Center at Rutgers, who's been a great advisor to us on this and many other projects. So without a doubt, I think we knew this before we got here, Ron, and you've been here many times before, but we've seen it with our own eyes. The education the students are receiving here is going to set them up for a bright future. But as we know, the future itself is ever-changing. Over the coming years, new technologies and economic realities will require workers to learn new skills. Our challenge is to ensure that the day these students walk out of the school for the last time isn't the end of the road for them in terms of skills development and training. We must continue to invest in people so we can continue to connect qualified workers with the new opportunities. Jobs NJ leverages resources across state government and builds on partnerships with employers to make sure we are expanding access to training and education as broadly as possible. This is about training our workforce for jobs that are available and in demand, and then helping them connect with those jobs. This is an approach that is very different than the way we've done things in the past. I think back to the last recession. One of the reasons New Jersey took so long to recover is because many of the jobs we lost never came back, and residents were left untrained and unprepared for the new jobs that eventually beckoned. That was a recipe for failure, and it failed many of our working families. So we're changing the recipe. Jobs NJ is a comprehensive set of public initiatives that build on our success to date with work-based learning, and it embraces the central notion that talent is one of the key core drivers of our economic growth. Again, hearkening back to our packed trip in India, the two words that describe this state more than any other are talent and location. It's up to us to maximize the hand that we have been dealt. It's a roadmap to making New Jersey the location of choice for employers and talent alike. It's a new mindset for preparing our workforce, not just for the jobs of tomorrow, but of tomorrow's tomorrow. And again, I cannot thank enough our Jobs and Economic Opportunity Council, where this whole notion was born and gestated, especially, as I mentioned, Zakiya, Lamont, Rob, and Tim for creating this new recipe for success. Simply put, we can't create a stronger and fairer New Jersey unless every worker knows that the future will work for them and not against them. Jobs NJ is how we give them this confidence, and we're going to build the future together. Again, thank you all so much for having us here and for hosting us so graciously, to the whole team here, Diane, and all of your colleagues. And with that, it is my honor to introduce our Secretary of Higher Education, Dr. Zakiya Smith Ellis.
So I appreciate the charge from the governor to really tackle this issue. This is something that we often hear. I know he and his colleagues hear this from businesses, but we actually hear it from students as well, as he mentioned in the State of the State. I would say the second most important thing that they say to me when I go across the state is, first, they're mostly interested in affordability. But second, they want to make sure that when they go to college, that they're able to get skills from that expensive, often training, that's going to make them competitive in the labor market. So to make sure that students actually have their needs met, which is part of this mutually reinforcing piece here, we've got to grow that pipeline. We need to make sure that we're putting some bold stakes in the ground, and this plan does that. It builds on our higher education plan, which many of you had input in and participated in. And that plan said that we needed to focus our attention on some target populations. And today, I'm excited to announce that we're committing to get 250,000 more African American, Latinx, and Native American students across the finish line to earn a post-secondary credential. Because it's not about It's not about college for necessarily everyone, but for those who go, they never go thinking that they're not going to complete. And too many of them don't get there. So we've got to do what we can to make sure that once they start, they finish strong. The other piece, and that we don't often talk about with post-secondary education, we think about them as kids, but there are a lot of adults who are seeking a post-secondary credential. It may be that they're starting at a community college, and this is something that I know we've talked with our partners at the community college sector a lot about, is getting more adults into that pipeline. So we're also committing to getting 25,000 more adults a credential, some kind of post-secondary credential by 2025. And then when they go, it's just not any credential, but we want to make sure that they're working in places, like I said, that are relevant, that they're getting the skills that they need. So making sure that we're increasing the number of those graduates who are employed in high-demand industries by 10%. That may not sound like a lot, but that is huge when you think about what the demand in the industries that are growing. So that is something that we're excited about. I want to share the ways that we're going to do that, is specifically as it relates to higher education. The governor mentioned that this is a comprehensive plan. There are some other folks here who are going to share different pieces of it, but the higher education components of this, which align with all of the other agencies that are listed here. One is to get students across the finish line, we have to make sure that colleges are strong and able to provide them with those supports that are needed, and that has to take a comprehensive approach. There's no one thing that's going to do it. There's no silver bullet. And many of you, I see many people in the room who helped us in the state plan working groups for the higher education state plan that the governor commissioned, and those working groups are completed, and they provided some really amazing recommendations and best practices. And today, I'm excited that we will have an Opportunity Meets Innovation Challenge, which will be competitive grants to institutions to be able to fulfill those working group recommendations. The last, just a couple of things that I will mention. That's not the only thing that we need to do. There's a lot of other things that we're building upon. We're building on the work of our tuition-free community college commitment, and we're trying to think about ways to make that commitment more broad so that more students have an affordable pathway. And we've been talking with the Making College Affordable working working group about ways to make that kind of guaranteed, affordable pathway more broad across the state, so more to come on that. And then many of you have been thinking about how do we make sure that business and industry provides input into the academic programs at colleges and universities so that students have that input. How do we make sure that we use good labor market data to inform the program offerings? And so we'll be taking a cross-government approach across Department of Labor, Department of Education, and all the folks that have responsibility for post-secondary oversight to ensure that that oversight is strong and that we have those connections so that people are actually getting what they are paying for when they go to college. So I thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you. You know, this is a combination, and this is an important point for one of us to make before I ask Tim to come up and say a few words. Jobs NJ is a combination of a lot of stuff that we're doing already, that we're sort of codifying and putting under one roof, as well as some new steps such as the Zakiya mentioned, the innovation grant program for institutions of higher education. And I don't think we could aspire to do that whole notion if we did not have the extraordinarily good working relationships we have across what have, I think, too often in the past been stovepipes in government. I give an enormous amount of credit to my colleagues up here, to Beth, to Joe, and to many others here who have made it their business to make sure that there are no barriers and walls between or among our various government departments or agencies. And because we have that confidence, we can put forward a program like this because we know we can take a lot of things that are happening in different places and again put them under one roof, and that it's not just words, but that it's actually effective in achieving the goals that Zakiya just outlined. So thank you to each and every one of you. With that, the CEO of the Economic Development Authority, Tim Sullivan.
Thank you, Governor. It's an honor to be here and an honor to be with my colleagues from the Jobs and Economic Opportunity Council to talk about this really exciting plan. Back in October of 2018, the Governor released his comprehensive economic development strategy. And I think one of the things that marked that approach and marked that strategy is different from how anyone else in New Jersey and most people across the country were thinking about economic development, is that it's a people-centered plan. It's how people are experiencing the economy. It's about good quality jobs. And in fact, the first chapter of that plan is about investing in people. And what we're here today to announce is some of the connective tissue between that plan and some of the great work and all the great work that my colleagues in the cabinet are doing, particularly around things like higher education. So for example, in this plan, the governor's committing to making sure that there is a high quality credential in each region at the community college level in each of the 8 priority sectors that are outlined in the governor's plan, so that as we think about new industries that are growing or industries that we are strong in today and need to stay strong, that we are giving folks the access to the right credentials and the right skills and the right tools in the toolkit to be able to compete for those jobs of the future. Because as we sit here right now, we have an unparalleled competitive advantage as it relates to talent. Every single conversation we have with a business leader, as the governor mentioned, centers around talent and infrastructure and location. But that's an asset that can erode really quickly, particularly in a highly competitive, changing economy. And if we're not making the kinds of investments in workforce development, which is the other side of the coin of economic development, we could lose that comparative advantage, that competitive advantage, and that would be a shame, and that would render us in a much, much more challenging position to compete long-term for the businesses of the future. Talent is the most precious commodity in the 21st century economy, and every investment we make in our people, in our talent, from the earliest age kids in the system that Lamont's responsible for, up through higher education into adult education, is a deeply important and high-return investment. So we're really excited about the plan that the governor's announcing today and eager to get to work on it.
Great job. Thank you, man. Thank you, Tim. Just a word on this point about talent. First of all, just to reiterate that I say often we are a proud organized labor state. So Greg Lallavie, who is here representing the operating engineers. I might add with his daughter, who's a counselor here, so that's kind of a cool family thing. So Team Lallavie's in the house in a big way. But we want to do a lot of this in concert with organized labor. Secondly, Tim said this, we start from a very good place. We can't take any of our advantages for granted, but we do have, as of September, the #1 rated public education system in America. Importantly, one of our little modules with Mr. Merck was a module that was combining what his folks were doing with English and dance. And so we're the first state in the history of America, to offer arts education universally to every single kid in public schools, which is a big deal. We have the highest concentration per square mile of scientists and engineers in the world. And lastly, we were ranked, I don't know who does these rankings, but we'll take it. We were ranked the smartest state. So there's nothing we can't do. So that's a really good place to start. I say all of that for two reasons. One is to reiterate Tim's point. You got to earn those stripes every single year. And we have to wake up every day and make sure we've got a plan in place that guarantees, as an example, that we've got one of the top couple of public education systems in America. The second reason I say all this is, unlike some other states, and I'm not going to pick fights with other states, that start with an enormous deficit as it relates to talent. We're not doing this because it's broke. We're doing this to get a lead, to get a big step ahead, to be able to do what I said at the outset, to dominate this decade, to dominate the innovation economy. We want to steal a march on any competitor, not just state, but any competitor location in the world. So I'm proud of the pieces of the puzzle that we have. To Tim's point, we got to continue to earn them. But boy, let's take this moment, this confluence of talent-related bragging rights, and put us in a quantumly different place. So with that, please help me welcome the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, Rob Acero. Angelo.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Governor. Thanks for doing this in my great hometown, East Brunswick, right in the heart of Middlesex, the greatest county in all the land. It's an appropriate, all right, let's call it Middlesex. It's an appropriate venue as a key. I have a tattoo of it right here. It's an appropriate venue as Zakia, Lamont, and I were here back in November of 2018, which seems like a decade ago, to talk about apprenticeship and what we would do together to increase their value in New Jersey. I don't think we could have imagined then the success we've had in this space, and Jobs NJ is a perfect way to supercharge and expand our efforts. We announced then we would work to have apprenticeship programs designated as a positive outcome for high schools on their school performance report, to reverse the false stigma associated with apprenticeship. Now that is a reality. Starting this year, if a student graduates and becomes an apprentice, that school will get the same credit or score on the report card as they would if that student went to Harvard. However, we recognize apprenticeship is not an either-or decision. During that same visit, we announced our plans with OSHE to revitalize NJ Place to help students apply their apprenticeships toward a college degree. Now we're exploring a new concept in New Jersey, the degree apprenticeship, to provide an opportunity to pursue a credit-bearing post-secondary education while earning an apprentice wage. Soon we'll be announcing, that's right, clap for that. You can clap for this too. Soon we'll be announcing grant opportunities in this space. Since the governor took office, there's been a 58% increase. 58% increase in apprenticeship programs in New Jersey. I mean, that is amazing. And I keep asking our guy, are you sure that's the right number? As of this month, there are more than 8,500 active apprentices in one of our 962 programs, a 6-year high for both figures. That includes over 1,000 right here in Middlesex County. These apprentices are enrolled in programs that train auto mechanics, skilled manufacturers, lab technologists, dementia care professionals, and even greenskeepers, jobs you don't traditionally associate with apprenticeship. Right down the road at Princeton Plasma Physics Lab, which is actually in Middlesex County, by the way, it's not actually in Princeton, we helped launch 3 technician apprenticeship programs to further fusion energy research. But you'll see a theme throughout the Jobs NJ report of ensuring equitable opportunity in our state that values diversity. Our GAINS grants, growing apprenticeships in non-traditional sectors, are giving unprecedented opportunities to women and people of color. 80% of the apprentices in our funded programs are African American, Hispanic, or female. To put that in perspective, that compares to under 40% in all other apprenticeship programs. At the DOL, we look forward to continuing our resolve to help close racial and gender wage and employment gaps, which is why I'm psyched about the goal and the plan of employing 42,000 new women and minority workers in New Jersey and giving them an increase in salary of $15,000 to $23,000. To expand access to opportunity for immigrants, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and those with a criminal background. to enhance the department's customized training programs and utilize our one-stop career centers, one of the great ones here in Middlesex, as a starting point for talent development, to match talent to employers by communicating to our students which jobs are most in demand and what they need to do to get them, to work with our employers through our sector-based industry partnerships and now NJ Talent Solutions to better understand and meet their future needs. And I want to acknowledge some of the employers that are here today that are already our partners. I see Sansone in the group, Operating Engineers, who mentioned before, the Employers Association of New Jersey, and Genesis Biotechnology Group. And there are more people working in New Jersey now than at any point in our state's history. Our unemployment rate has remained at historic lows. But to make sure this prosperity isn't temporary, we can't stop planning for the future just because our economy is strong now. As part of Jobs NJ, we will reimagine our unemployment system as a reemployment system, incorporating national best practices and evidence-based interventions such as digital job coaching, tools that will be available via our new digital coaching platform, thanks Office of Innovation, of the New Jersey Career Network, released in the beta version as part of Jobs NJ. To the employers who ask us, where am I going to find the specialized workers I need, let me assure you, with Governor Murphy's leadership and through the Jobs NJ framework, we will continue making smart investments and implementing policies that cultivate growth. None of us in this room can predict the future, but we can prepare for it by making sound decisions in the present. Jobs NJ is a giant leap in the right direction, so thank you all for being here today, and thanks, Governor, for pulling us all together and giving us the space to do this great work.
Thanks, man. Wow. Even my mind is blown by some of those numbers. I gave the State of the State address yesterday. A friend of mine who said it was a really good address did say that he was able to watch The Irishman during the inside of the address. I took that as a positive. I thought that was a very good movie. And I'm Irish, so that's another reason. But there's another reason why we're here. We're not spiking any footballs. I hope you know that. We've got a historically low unemployment rate in the state, and we're incredibly proud of that. But at some point, there's going to be a recession. At some point, the winds are going to start blowing in our face. And I mentioned in my remarks, we didn't play that well last time. It is imperative that we play it well this time. And investing in talent programs, investing in Jobs NJ is a big part. It's not the only part, but it's a big part of our efforts, not just as an ongoing static nature to make sure that we're matching best employers with potential employees, but that we're putting as much ballast as possible in place against any choppy weather that may be coming on the economic front. With that last, but certainly not least, please help me welcome our Commissioner of the Department of Education, Dr. Lamont Repillette.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I am born and raised in Middlesex County, Carteret, New Jersey, Ron Rios. One of his daughters was one of my cheerleaders at the basketball team, so we have that connection there. But it's great to be back in Middlesex. Governor Murphy, thank you for your steadfast leadership in growing New Jersey's innovation economy. Secretary Smith-Ellis, CEO Sullivan, and Commissioner Angelo, I am proud to work with these individuals on a daily basis. The governor talking about his efforts in breaking down the silos between agencies is commendable across not just our Middlesex County, but throughout the state. So thank you, Governor, for your stewardship and your leadership. State Board President Kathy Goldenberg and the whole Middlesex County team, thank you for your shared commitment to growing the talent and potential of New Jersey schools children. By marshaling the expertise and resource of all the agencies and stakeholders around the room, the Jobs NJ plan advances a whole government approach that is greater than the sum of its parts. Only together can we build access, training, and infrastructure necessary to position New Jersey as a leader in a national and global economy and as a center of innovation. We're proud of the work we've done at the Department of Education. More important, to advance this cross-agency initiative. To expand access and opportunity, the administration's Computer Science for All initiative has invested $4 million to promote equitable access to high-quality computer science education for students throughout the state. But beyond computer science, we're strengthening our career and technical education through securing our children's future Bond Act grants for vocational schools and through the mission-driven implementation of the federal Perkins 5 law, which increases access to high-quality CTE programs. To train individuals for in-job demands, last year the administration rolled out the P-Tech school model that brings together public schools, community colleges, and businesses to provide high school students a chance to earn a STEM-related associate's degree while still in high school. This year we'll be rolling out 2 more within the coming month. Building on this work and supporting the achievements of New Jersey Apprenticeship Network, the department's expanding pre-apprenticeship program in a new direction, or we call it Expand Grant, will help students develop career focus in key New Jersey industry working with the Labor and Workforce Department. So thank you, Rob, for really partnering with us on that grant. Through these policies and other initiatives, we're creating new pathways for success in high school. Our schools are not only providing students with a world-class education, but more and more districts are offering pre-apprenticeship programs, career and technical education, and initiatives through which students earn industry-valued credentials or college credits while they're still in high school. These efforts work in tandem with systemic reform, like our historic investment in school funding and making preschool education a statewide priority. So, if I can make one quote of significance, today would have been the 91st birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., one of the most prolific engineers of economic and social justice. I'm reminded of his words in 1964 as he accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. He said, "The rich nations must use their vast resources of wealth to develop the undeveloped, school the unschooled, and feed the unfed. Ultimately, a great nation is a compassionate nation. No individual or nation can be great if it does not have a concern for the least of these." So thank you, Governor Murphy, for not only your economic plan that really talks and highlights equity, but more importantly, your vision for a stronger and fairer New Jersey. It trickles down to our agencies and allow us to make sure that we're not just looking for all students and making sure they have access to high-quality education and now high-quality jobs by actually centering on our talent. Thank you, Governor Murphy.
Thanks, Lamont. That was really well done. I didn't realize it was his birthday today. What'd you say, 91? Thank you very much, Lamont. We'll take a couple of questions, but before I do, 2 quick comments. Something that we've been doing and something that we will do as part of this. What we've been doing is Beth has been chairing a task force on the future of work. We put that together, I think, almost immediately after we got into office. It's important to make note of that, other than to say thanks to Beth and the folks who are serving on that, because we think we know what tomorrow looks like, but that's evolving as we speak. I had dinner last week with a family that has had a trucking business, and just look at that industry as an example, and the enormous, through artificial intelligence, the enormous dislocation that is already beginning to take place. So Beth, thank you to you and your team on that. And what we will do as part of Jobs NJ, and we haven't put a fine point on this because we have to make sure we don't overpromise and underdeliver, and Joe will be an important part of this along with Kathleen Frangione, who's our head of policy. We will have a single point of contact we already have it with institutions of higher education, but it will look a little bit like our intergovernmental affairs unit. So if you're a mayor or a freeholder director, there's one. Ron calls me, so I cover Ron. But you each know in our front office, you've got a contact of a person to call if you've got an issue, and it's across the span of government. You've got flooding, you had a fire. Bound Brook was a good example of this the other night, which also included me personally. We want to try to replicate that model for the big players out there. I don't have a fine point on it yet because you can't do that with everybody as we do with 565 municipalities. We do that. In fact, you have to. That's why we're here. But for the big employers, the folks who have big uptick potential aspirations, we sat down not that long ago with a company. I'll leave out who they were. They have about 4,000 employees. Most of them are in Middlesex County. What are their aspirations? They want to see that number go up by 50%. 50%. That's 2,000 people, and these are highly skilled STEM jobs. So that company is going to get a single point of contact, in fact has it, to figure out how can they work with Zakia or Rob or Lamont or Tim or Beth or anyone in our administration to figure out how we can best. And if you want in your mind's eye what Jobs NJ is, the employers are here, the employees are here. Our job is to make them meet and make them meet as seamlessly as possible. So more to come on that. Take a couple of questions. Please, Catherine.
Are you going to need any legislation or funding to achieve any of this, or can you do it within all of the existing?
Yeah, so we'll do most of it, as far as we can tell right now, we'll do most of it with what we've got, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of this is activity that's already going on that we want to sort of put under one roof, but almost certainly we'll have some budget asks, which will not be overwhelming, but for instance, to fund the grant program that Zakiya mentioned at the outset. More on that in terms of the specific details. It will not be a big number, though. Please.
So yesterday during your speech, you mentioned that you wanted to go for the millionaire's tax cut. What's different this year that makes you actually get it done?
First of all, it's the right thing to do. And I've found over time, first of all, just because we haven't gotten it done isn't reason to give up doing something that we believe in. That over time, water and other realities, including political realities, find their normal resting place. And when you've got 70-something% of the state, including a majority of Republicans who think it's a good idea, I'm optimistic we'll get there. Particularly, and this is the important point, what are you doing with the proceeds? There's really two reasons we want to do this. Number one, what are you doing with the proceeds? We're putting it, some combination, into direct, measured in hundreds of millions of dollars, direct property tax relief for the middle class. And secondly, to help us fund the increased investments that we want to make in public education. So the use of proceeds are showstoppers. They're unassailable. They go directly into the middle class of the state. We're the quintessential middle class state. As it goes, we go. And secondly, I mentioned this earlier as part of the Jobs NJ rationale to prepare ourselves for rougher seas if they come economically. This is a very reliable, steady, year in, year out source of revenue that we're going to need if we get into choppy waters. Dustin.
Do you view the rise in measles cases a public health threat? And if so, why haven't you made a vocal sort of push for the vaccination bill to get to your desk in a similar way that you did with the driver's license?
Yeah, I think we've been pretty clear on that. I'm not sure I'm qualified to say whether it's a public crisis or not, Dustin. That's not a judgment that I would make, but obviously it's important, and the safety and security of the 9 million folks who call this state their home is job number one for me personally, and in particular and especially our kids and vulnerable populations. And so that's job number one. Secondly, I've been pretty clear that we make our decisions based on science and data, and we'll continue to. And I think one of our colleagues said yesterday, if that were to come our way, I don't talk about prospective bills in the specifics, but I think we've given a pretty strong indication that that's something that we would support. Please.
Your voice of health is struggling in the legislature. Your voice of health.
You have to ask the legislators on that, please.
Governor, the commission on the status of women, is there a priority to get this commission filled, and will you lean on the Senate to get it done?
So we nominated 11 people in May, on May 17th, and one of them was confirmed by the Senate, I think, the other day. So that's a question for the Senate. We want to see that fully staffed up. By the way, Dustin, I have to go back to this. You mentioned the driver's licenses. There are colleagues here who could comment on this separately. When I made one vocal point on the driver's licenses, I was told, hey, back off, buddy. We'll get to that eventually. So that cuts both ways. Please.
You talked about 250,000 additional Black and Latino and Native Americans. Are these potential kids' employers? Have they been identified? Are you looking at specific cities? Are you going to certain schools? That's a huge number. How are you going to get?
Come on down.
That is a huge number. Currently, we have, and that's a number that would be over the course of this entire plan, so not in any one year. We're talking about getting up to there. But there are a number of experts who already say we need more people to graduate from college. Say our college graduation rate right now for those students is somewhere around 50%. So many of them are already in school, and the reason why we have the grant program, which is about comprehensive supports to make sure that they finish, is to make sure that the ones that are already there are finishing, and then, of course, more people will come in. But we could get a breakdown afterwards if we want to call my office and how we might be able to get there, but we are confident that we have students already, and there are people in the state who could benefit from post-secondary education.
So that's the big, may I just underscore one of the points you just made? One of the big pieces here is this is not necessarily finding 250,000 people who are not in the system.
Right.
This is increasing our batting average
Yes.
overwhelmingly of folks who are in the
Yes.
system.
Yeah.
Which is why those grants to the institutions of higher education that do the best job of turning that 50% graduation rate into a much higher number matters so much. Daniel?
Governor, what other tax increases or fees, be it on individuals or businesses, are you going to be pursuing?
We've targeted several as it relates to you personally, Daniel, and I'll come back to that. No, sorry, that's not true. That's not true. We like Daniel, I like you a lot, so I won't do that to you. More on that later. I don't wake up every morning reflexively trying to figure out ways to tax people, right? So in fact, to the contrary, I wake up every morning trying to figure out how we rein in the mess of property taxes that we inherited 2 years ago. And we've made a lot of progress, but we have a long way to travel. But I do wake up asking myself, what is fair? What is right? So to ask the wealthiest among us, and by the way, I don't begrudge their wealth, I don't begrudge their success. God bless them, we want more of them. But I want this sort of to be a level, fair playing field for the middle class. I don't appreciate the fact that we are footing 100% of our opioid program, which is beginning to show signs of success. And I say that in the context of over 3,000 lives lost last year is 3,000 lives too many and is hardly a success. But we're paying for all of that. I don't think that's right. I think the opioid manufacturers and distributors ought to be helping us pay for that. If a company throws people off and doesn't provide them health care, and we and the feds then pick up the cost of Medicaid entirely on our back, I don't think that's fair. I don't think the fact that gun licenses and fees for them haven't gone up since 1966 is fair. So I'm not going to preview my budget address, but stuff that isn't right is stuff that we're going to continue to stay focused on.
Are you going to try to push to extend the CBT increase beyond the
I'll leave it where I with my remarks. Michael.
Senator Booker no longer in the race? Do you have any preference for president?
I appreciate that. First of all, I love the guy. We were all in for him. It's one of these things where sometimes it's just not meant to be, and I'm not sure any of us, beginning with him, he's got all that it takes and all that this country needs right now, and it just wasn't to be. And so I also would acknowledge that he remains a young man. So I think his quest ultimately to get there remains alive and well, just not this time. And the answer is, for the time being, he called me on Monday morning, and we had the State of the State yesterday, so we're at the moment still reacting to the news from him, and if we've got any news otherwise, we'll let you all know. Catherine, did you have your hand up, or are you good?
Yeah. On the sales tax, I mean, do you think that that's a possibility, after the assembly elections, that could be something to see?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. We'll come back to you when we're putting the pieces of the budget together as we speak. That's a 5 or 6 week window between now and then. I want to begin with doing what's right and fair, and I've already mentioned some of the things that, at least for me, are the ones where I'd start. I want to, again, Diane, thank you so much for hosting us. Ronnie, thank you, as always, for hosting us. To my colleagues, Tim, Lamont, Rob, Zakia, Beth, Joe, the entire squad here, thank you so much. This is an extraordinary county. This is an extraordinary institute of education, and we think Jobs NJ is an extraordinary, game-changing program for New Jersey. Thank you all. I'm taking my sign, and I'm going home.
They double the size. It look good.